Hello there, everyone. My name is Waffles the Asian Yenbear, and today I have the always wonderful Gale Riot.
Yo guys, what's going on? Looking forward to discussing this topic, as it'll be very interesting to see what will happen, of course.
Oh yeah, for sure. You guys have seen the title. We are here to talk about whether we think that Dynamax will return in the Diamond and Pearl remakes. For those of you guys who have never played Pokemon Sword and Shield, because I know there are a good amount of you, Dynamax was the new battle feature that they debuted in the series, kind of like Mega Evolutions and Z Crystals were before. Dynamax involves Pokemon growing way larger than their normal size, and some very specific Pokemon have specific giant forms called Gigantamax when they Dynamax. So, practically speaking, just once a Dynamax happens, or once a Pokemon Dynamaxes, it has a lot higher HP, and its moves change into these generic Dynamax moves. Based on the typing and effects of the original moves, their base power is like much higher than the normal attacks would be. However, unlike Mega Evolutions, the transformation is limited to only 3 turns. The trade-off for that, though, is that every Pokemon, aside from the cover legendaries and I believe Eternatus, or Eternatus is the way you're supposed to pronounce it. I always do it wrong. Yeah, I always do it wrong. Everyone calls me out for that, but fine. Anyway, all of those are able to Dynamax. And I think that I speak for the majority of the fan base here. I did not prefer Dynamax, but how do you feel about this, Gale?
I mean, Dynamaxing in general, firstly for me, like while it was a effective combination of Z moves and Megas, it felt like, a new form, a limited amount of turn duration and usage, and of course the new special moves, quote unquote, with the max like flare, max overgrowth and whatnot. It pretty much was like a combination of the two, and as you mentioned, like while the fan base didn't like it, I'll have to agree with them. I didn't like it either, to be honest. I'm not.
I thought you were going somewhere else.
It wasn't great. It wasn't a great addition, in my opinion. I think it has a lot of flaws, and it was completely noticeable as well when even Smogon, obviously a sort of tier list maker for Pokemon and competitive usage, they banned it. They immediately banned it, like in a couple of weeks, I think it was, or the second month of the game release. It was like, no, we can't have Dynamaxing. It's just completely unbalanced, and it brought the concepts of raids and stuff to the main game. But I mean, you could tell, like when you entered a battle, be it in the game or in competitive, it just felt too uneven. And in my opinion, it probably is, out of the 3, the worst gimmick they could have added, honestly. It's a toss-up between this and Z moves, in my opinion. But the unbalance of Dynamaxing and the fact that it just replaces 2 decent gimmicks, well, a very decent gimmick in Mega Evolutions and then a alright gimmick in Z moves, it just not for me, man. It's just not for me. Some of the designs, I'll admit, like for the G-Maxes, like for example G-Max Snorlax, G-Max Melmetal and whatnot, are phenomenal, but the cost for the negatives, I should say, are just way too high.
Oh yeah, I think I can agree with you on basically all those points. And I kind of like that you brought up the raids. I think that is specifically where Dynamax should have stayed. You go into the raid den, you're able to Dynamax there, it makes the raid den special, and you face the Dynamax enemy. I think that would have been really cool if that was all it was. But I think you're right, it's really unbalanced, and I don't really dislike it in battles everywhere else. Like, anytime, especially in the gyms, like anytime you went into a gym and you could just Dynamax, it was just over. So I was like, I don't know about that. But I think the main reason for me that I think, because I'm taking the stand that Dynamax is going to actually return, it's actually based on the precedent set by Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So in Pokemon X and Y, as we all know, they introduced Mega Evolutions, and then the remakes of that generation, so the Gen 6 remaking Omega Ruby, remaking Ruby and Sapphire, they kept that concept, and they added even more Mega Evolutions like Mega Blaziken and Mega Gallade. So I kind of think we're going to see the same thing here. I think that we'll see Dynamax continue, and that we'll get a few new Gigantamax forms for some of the popular Sinnoh Pokemon.
I mean, like, while you're on the side of it'll happen, I think it might not. Now, I think there will be a limited occurrence of it, but I just think plainly, and at least for the main portion of the game, I just don't think we'll see it because of the fact that, well, Dynamaxing's lore is based on the whole energy and, the energy built by Eternatus and whatnot, and this sort of Dynamax energy that they've been mentioning throughout the game of Sword and Shield. I just don't see it happening in the Sinnoh region at all, because there's nothing linking towards it. Now, of course, they could potentially change it a bit, but we could, like I said, if it does happen in the post game where we see like potentially, Palkia changing it or something along those lines, we could see new forms for certain Pokemon. But I think at least for the main portion of the game, I just don't see it happening because of how the lore works for Sinnoh.
Oh yeah, I don't think it'll be anywhere near as much in the main game as like every gym having it like it was in Sword and Shield, but I think that you brought up the point about Palkia, and that's kind of where I think it's going to happen, because if you talk to Professor Magnolia in Sword and Shield, she describes Dynamax as like the Pokemon distorting space around itself to change its size, and the Sinnoh region has Palkia, who specializes at messing with space. So I kind of think that Palkia is going to play a bigger part than it normally would, even though it did play a big part in the Platinum and all those games. But I think it'll play an even bigger part. Yeah, a bigger part, and be the reason why these trainers are actually able to Dynamax in this version of the Sinnoh region. So I do think it'll be there, and I think that Palkia is going to be the reason why.
Yeah, I definitely think, like you said, like I don't see it playing part of the main game because, well, for example, the gyms aren't big enough. Like we know the Sinnoh gyms are. The Sinnoh gyms aren't like the whole reason why we could Dynamax in Galar was because the gyms were like the stadiums. They were actual stadiums, whereas Pokemon gyms in Sinnoh and any other region you look at it, it's like it's extremely tiny. So, well, I wouldn't say extremely tiny, but they're really small enclosed buildings, so it's not possible for Dynamax to happen there. But like you mentioned, I do believe Palkia will have an effect, maybe even Giratina with the Distortion Word potentially, where in the post game where we may be able to have like Dynamax Raid Adventures in the Distortion World instead or something like that maybe. And it'll be something post game related, and it'll be limited to that, like I mentioned earlier on. And with how Pokemon has been handling its universe or multiverse at this point, we could make an argument that Dynamaxing is only limited to like a certain region and or a feature of a certain universe, whereas Sinnoh is obviously, well, its own alternate universe, and therefore the energy, quote unquote, would not exist in Sinnoh, even though we just had Dynamaxing in like the previous game.
Yeah, I think that they could make that point if they wanted to go that way. I just think that because that's what happened in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, that it'll continue here, but I can definitely see them if they wanted to get rid of Dynamax, which I think it's relatively unpopular, so I could see them actually getting rid of it. They do have an out for it. But like you mentioned with the Giratina and Distortion World thing, I think that would be pretty cool, getting Dynamax Adventures, because I think that's one of the main things that people have actually liked about the DLCs recently, besides them adding all the new Pokemon. So I think, yeah, if they keep Dynamax, I think they'll keep it for Dynamax Adventures. I think that maybe, you're right, it's not going to be in the gyms. I think maybe Palkia would be like causing a ruckus or something, and then, oh no, all the Pokemon are Dynamaxing. Something like that I think I could see happening in the story. But I do think we'll see Dynamax. But that's kind of in between, we both got different opinions there. Well,
now I completely agree. I think, with all things said and done, we'll have to just wait and see. The only thing I can think of is, like you mentioned, Palkia and Giratina. I mean, you could argue maybe Dialga could change the flow of time or something like that. Heck, if they want to really go that far, maybe Arceus just decides, you know what, snap of the finger, change the whole Sinnoh region completely. Like, that would be, like, completely wild and bamboozling.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it would be really cool because it will finally, Arceus is doing something in the main story that isn't limited to us hacking the game and getting the Azure Flute in, so that would be very, very, very cool. But yeah, that's all from me on my end. I just think, like, yeah, as I said, it's just unlikely, but there are possibilities for them to somehow forcefully push it in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're kind of right there. I would love to see Arceus being able to actually do something in the game because, I mean, he's the god of Pokemon. We gotta see that at some point. But yeah, exactly. I think that's basically it for me as well. So let's wrap things up here. We would love to hear how you feel about Dynamax, and if you think it's going to be in the remakes, make sure to let us know in those comments down below, and make sure to subscribe to 5-9 Gaming for more theories and discussions about Pokemon in the future. I've been Waffles the Asian Yenber, and
It's been Gil right here. We'll see y'all next time.
Bye!